The argument over amaranth has a strange answer. Both sides are right. The gardener calling it a useful crop may be growing one species. The gardener calling it a weed may be looking at something completely different under the same common name. I made that mistake myself. I treated the word amaranth like it meant one plant. It does not. There are 5 types you need to know, and one of them is the weed from the title. The other 4 explain why this plant gets so confusing in the first place. Some are grown for grain, leaves, or flowers. One gets especially strange when you save the seed for several seasons, because what comes back can start drifting from what you originally planted. By the end, you will know what each type is for, what belongs in your beds, and which one does not. Number 1. Grain amaranth, illegal to grow for a century. That tall red plume in your neighbor's flower bed? The Aztecs called it the food that never dies. For about a century, growing it was illegal. I stood in front of a stand of it once, shoulder height, blazing red, 2 houses down from mine. I figured it was ornamental, something a landscaper picked for color. I had no idea I was looking at the plant an entire empire ran on. Nobody tells you this before you buy the seed. That plume is doing an old job. Grain. 2 species handle it. Amaranthus cruentus and Amaranthus hypochondriacus look almost the same once they're in your kitchen, but they split hard out in the field. Cruentus doesn't care how long the day runs. It just adapts, across more latitudes and more soil types. Hypochondriacus needs short days to flower, so it does its best work at higher elevation and lower latitude. Pick the wrong one for your region, and you'll get plenty of green growth and a disappointing seed head. Here's what's actually happening at the genetic level. The wild ancestor of this plant carries dark seed, almost black, built to hide against bare dirt from anything hungry passing by. Thousands of years of people picking out the palest seeds and replanting them switched that color off. What you get now is seed pale enough to spot from across a field, easy to see, easy to gather at harvest time. That's not an accident. That's thousands of years of your ancestors doing the sorting for you, one handful at a time. Here's the number that actually matters. This grows as an annual almost anywhere in the country, so forget hardiness zone entirely. What you need is heat. 90 to 110 warm days with no frost. Space rows 18 to 24 inches apart. Then thin plants to 8 to 12 inches once they're up and growing. Nothing complicated there. And here's the detail that trips up first-timers every single season. It takes roughly 700,000 seeds to fill 1 pound. That's how easy it is to sow too thick and end up thinning half the row. You'll know it's ready when the seed heads turn dry and papery and a light shake sends seed rattling into your palm. Archaeologists pulled the earliest white-seeded amaranth out of the ground at Tehuacan, Mexico, dated to around 4000 BC. The Aztecs called it huautli and baked it into ceremonial cakes for their festivals. After the Spanish conquest, growing it got stamped out entirely, because the plant was tangled up with the religion Spain was trying to erase from the continent. I still do a double take when I see it grown as a hedge. If your growing season runs under 90 warm days and you're not starting seed indoors early, skip this one for now. It won't dry down on the plant before the first frost hits, and you'll lose the harvest standing in the row. A whole empire ran on that plant. Your neighbor just thinks it's pretty. Number 2. Leafy amaranth, the one species that never crossbreeds. This is the only amaranth on this list that will never surprise you. It genetically refuses to mix with any of the other 4. Amaranthus tricolor isn't grown for its seed. It's grown for the leaf. In the Caribbean, it's called callaloo, and it's been showing up in stews and stir-fries there for generations. Some seed catalogs sell it as Joseph's coat for the red, green, and gold splashed across every single leaf. A plant that looks decorative and eats like a green at the same time. Decorative on the outside, dinner on the inside. Cut it at 12 inches tall and it keeps producing. A true cut-and-come-again crop that just regrows what you take. It thrives in the exact heat and humidity that sends your lettuce and spinach bolting straight into July. Botanically, this comes down to one simple split. Every other species on this list, the grain types and the ornamental type, sits close enough together genetically to swap pollen freely with each other. Tricolor stands apart from all of them. It doesn't accept pollen from the others, and it doesn't offer any either. That matters most if you ever save your own seed. The grain types can drift into something new over a few summers, but tricolor can't. That's the whole reason it earns the top spot on a list about telling amaranth species apart. Plant it in your yard once, and it stays exactly what the tag promised, season after season. Down to specifics now. Look for Amaranthus tricolor red garnet, sometimes labeled red callaloo on the packet. It grows as an annual in zone 3 through 10, though it really wants soil above 70 degrees before you put it in the ground. Space plants 12 to 24 inches apart, and expect your first cut of leaves in 30 to 40 days. In the hottest part of summer, afternoon shade keeps the color from washing out to a dull green. Then it keeps giving leaves. If you keep paying for bunches of Asian greens at the store, this is the one I'd tell any beginner to start with. It replaces a purchase you make over and over. It's the plant that makes that whole habit easy to quit. Skip it if your soil stays cool year-round. Below 70 degrees, growth stalls, the roots sit wet, and you'll be pulling out a rotted stand before it ever gets going. The crossing group can drift. This one stays exactly what you planted. Number 3. Love Lies Bleeding. Ornamental by day, dinner by fall. Half the gardeners growing this one for the flower bed have no idea it's also dinner. Amaranthus caudatus goes by Love Lies Bleeding, and it's been grown for the flower bed since the 1600s. Those crimson to burgundy tassels droop down 2 feet long by midsummer. Dramatic enough that flower bed gardeners plant it purely for the color and never look any deeper. It comes from high up in the Andes, Peru, Bolivia, Ecuador. A mountain plant putting on a full show in a flat backyard fence line. What almost nobody realizes is that it's actually one of the 3 grain amaranths from earlier on this list. Both the young leaves and the seed are edible, start to finish. Nobody puts that second use on the seed packet. The plant does not know it's decorative. It grows the exact same way whether you're cutting the leaves for dinner or letting the whole thing run to seed for a fall harvest. You decide the job, not the plant. Pick the leaves young at 12 inches and you're eating a green hardly anyone thinks to try. Skip the harvest. Let the tassels dry on the stem instead, and you've got grain amaranth by another name. The flower itself self-pollinates right there on the wind. No bees required. That is part of why it puts on such a reliable show every single summer, without you doing a thing to earn it. This is where guessing stops. Look for straight Amaranthus caudatus, sold plainly as Love Lies Bleeding. It grows as a warm season bedding plant almost anywhere in the country, zone 2 through 11, and it stretches 3 to 8 feet tall on a 1 to 3 foot spread, easily tall enough to anchor the back of a border. It dies at about 39 degrees, so wait until every trace of frost is gone before it goes in the ground. Once it's rooted, it shrugs off drought without complaint. And if it's planted straight in the ground instead of a container, you can skip fertilizer entirely. In the ground, that is all it needs. One thing worth knowing before you eat the leaves: grow it in soil heavy with nitrogen, usually from chemical fertilizer, and the leaves can build up more nitrate than you want on your plate. Only matters if you're eating it. Stick to organic beds if you're planning to harvest it, and keep it well away from any lawn spots that get sprayed or treated. I planted a row of this along my back fence years ago purely for the color, no other plan in mind. It wasn't until late in the season, pinching back the tassels to keep the row tidy for a fall party, that I realized the young leaves I'd been tossing in the compost bin were edible the whole time, same as any garden green I'd grow on purpose. If you skip the chemical fertilizer and pick from an organic bed, this plant earns its spot doing 2 jobs from one single packet of seed. 1 packet of seed. A flower bed and a harvest, same plant. But the next one on this list is the reason you can't always trust the seed you saved from last year. And it sets up the one entry you really don't want to skip. Number 4. Garden Hybrid Amaranth. Same seed, different plant by year 3. Save amaranth seed for a few years in a row, and the plant that comes up eventually isn't the one you started with, and it's not your fault. 3 of the species on this list, Caudatus, Cruentus, and Hypochondriacus, can cross-pollinate with each other, and with weedy relatives growing nearby in the same season. Tricolor, the leaf type from a few entries back, is the one exception. It stands alone and never crosses with any of the others, no matter what's blooming next to it. The wild plant these garden types most often cross with is Amaranthus hybridus, sometimes called smooth pigweed or careless weed, a common volunteer that pops up on its own in any patch of disturbed dirt. Look at the DNA and it's clear. Hybridus is the direct wild parent of all 3 domesticated grain species. Same bloodline. One side cultivated for centuries, one side never touched at all. Here's the plain English version of the botany. Amaranth flowers pollinate on the wind, not bees working a tidy, contained patch. Pollen travels farther than most gardeners assume, and it mixes with whatever amaranth relative happens to be blooming nearby at the exact same moment. Save seed year after year without isolating your plants, and a little more wild lineage slips in with every single generation. Remember the pale white seed from a couple entries back, the one generations of selection worked to create? That's exactly what fades first. Once hybridus mixes back in, the color starts drifting toward its dark, wild original. Once you see that, the rest makes sense. The exact detail looks like this. The fix is keeping plants apart, one way or another. Old seed savers have been flagging this for years. Bag the flower heads before they open, or isolate your plants by a few hundred feet, and the seed you collect in year 3 will still grow the plant you planted in year 1. Skip that step, and watch for the drift yourself over the following seasons. Color fading a shade each year, flower clusters shrinking down, plants growing shorter and thinner than the parent that started the whole run. The first time this happened to me, I'd been saving seed from an ornamental stand for 4 summers straight. No isolation, no bagging, no second thought about it. By year 4, the tassels had gone ragged and pale next to the photo on the original seed packet still tucked in my shed. I stood there trying to figure out what I'd done wrong before I finally landed on the actual answer. Wind-blown pollen from a neighbor's amaranth 2 yards over, mixing in a little more every single year. This only shows up after several seasons of saving your own seed without isolating it. Buy fresh seed and grow it for 1 summer, and none of this applies to you at all. It's the multi-year seed savers, the ones who pride themselves on never buying a packet twice, who need to hear this the most. Same bag of seed, different plant, 3 summers later, 4 down. But the one from the title, the one that made you click on this video, is right after this. If this level of detail on telling 5 look-alike plants apart is what you come here for, subscribe and hit the bell. Every video, same level of specific. Number 5. Palmer Amaranth. 1 plant, 600,000 seeds a season. This is the one from the title, and unlike the other 4, you don't want it anywhere near your beds, even by accident. Amaranthus palmeri, Palmer amaranth, is native to the desert southwest and northern Mexico. It is spread across most of the country by now, riding in on contaminated seed mixes, hay, farm equipment, even birds. Here's the honest clarification, tying back to what you just learned. Palmer amaranth grows as separate male and female plants. a separate branch of the amaranth family entirely from the four you just met. It does not cross into your ornamental or grain amaranth the way the last entry described. It doesn't need to. It spreads entirely on its own. Several states, Delaware, Minnesota, Ohio among them, list it by name as a noxious weed. Seed mixes containing it can't legally be sold there at all. This is biology, not opinion. One female Palmer amaranth plant, growing without much competition, produces somewhere between 200,000 and 600,000 seeds in a single season. One study out of Missouri counted more than 250,000 seeds on a single plant. Those seeds aren't building anything. They're not feeding you, and they're not decorating a fence line. They exist purely to fill every inch of open ground next year. Add resistance to several major herbicide groups, glyphosate among them, and you've got a plant that farmers spend real money fighting every season. The USDA's own invasive species program flags it plainly. Palmer amaranth is native to the desert Southwest, and it's now spreading fast across the rest of the country. Here's the number that puts it in perspective. In soybean fields, a density of just 10 Palmer amaranth plants in a single meter of row can cut yield by as much as 68%. That's farm-scale carnage. Not something your raised bed will ever see, but it tells you exactly how hard this plant fights for space once it takes root anywhere. And here's the frustrating part. The seed itself looks identical to every other amaranth seed on this list to the naked eye. If a packet just says amaranth with nothing else printed on it, there's no way to know which of these 5 you're actually holding. Down to specifics now, because this is the part that actually protects your garden. Palmer amaranth grows 6 to 10 feet tall, sometimes taller, with egg-to-diamond-shaped leaves arranged alternately up the stem. Run your finger over the leaf tip and you'll feel a small, sharp spine, something none of the other 4 plants on this list have. The female flower spikes run 2 to 3 feet long, stiff and genuinely painful to grab. Compare that to the soft, drooping tassels of the Love Lies Bleeding a couple entries back, and the difference is obvious the moment you touch both. People still argue about this, and honestly, both sides have a point. One side swears amaranth is just a weed, full stop, something to rip out on sight. The other side has grown it for years and loves every bit of it, from the grain to the flower bed. They're not really disagreeing with each other. They're describing 2 completely different plants that happen to share one common name. If you've never grown amaranth before, and you spot something volunteering in a vegetable bed or a patch of freshly turned dirt, don't diagnose it by eye alone. Check the spine on the leaf tip. Check the flower shape against what you just learned. Or bring a sample to your local extension office if you're still not sure, especially if you garden anywhere in the South or Midwest. 4 of these you plant on purpose. This one you just learned to walk away from. 5 plants, 1 name. A grain the Aztecs called food that never dies. A leaf green that never lets you down at the store. A flower bed that doubles as dinner. A saved seed that can quietly turn into something else. And one you just don't plant, on purpose or by accident. One more thing before we wrap up. If a volunteer amaranth just shows up on its own, in a spot you never planted, in disturbed or bare dirt, treat it as a stranger until proven otherwise. One you planted on purpose in a bed you prepared is almost always safe. One that showed up uninvited in a gap in the yard is the one worth checking first. So here's what to do next. Before you order any amaranth seed tonight, flip the packet over. Find the scientific name, not just the word amaranth, the actual 2-word Latin name. If it says A. cruentus, A. hypochondriacus, A. tricolor, or A. caudatus, you're planting on purpose. If it just says amaranth with nothing else, put it back. The common name lies a little. The scientific name never does.